You have been taught that your outer conditions are the measure of your spiritual progress. I am here to tell you that this is a profound error. The world screams that success, the visible trophy, is the only sign of truth. But I say unto you, the outer world is the shadow. The real movement, the only movement that matters, happens in the silence within. You may look at your life and see lack, or friction, or longing, and believe you are off the path. This is the great illusion. The path is not paved with what you gather, but with what you relinquish. The journey of manifestation is not one of acquisition, but of revelation. It is the unfolding of a certainty already established in the kingdom within. There are signs, unmistakable to the inner ear, that you are aligned with this infinite flow, not signs the world would applaud, but signs that whisper of a door opening within your own consciousness. They are felt not in the clamor of getting, but in the sacred quiet of knowing. Today, we shall move past the noise and behold these 5 landmarks on the inner path. They will challenge everything you have been told about how your good is made manifest. If what you hear speaks to that in you, which is already awake, I invite you to seal this communion. Subscribe to this channel as an act of dedication to your own inner journey, and in the comments below, place the number 11, symbolizing the alignment of your inner vision with the outer manifestation. Let us look, then, at the first and perhaps most challenging sign. You may find yourself in the midst of a conversation where once you would have eagerly sought agreement or defended a position with fervor. Now, there is a different movement within. A quiet settles over you, not of indifference, but of a profound and unshakable knowing that the truth of your being requires no defense, no external validation. This is the sign of a deepening inner authority. The world's shouts grow faint, and the inner voice, that still, small voice, becomes the only counsel you seek. Consider the common crossroads of life: a career decision, a relationship choice, a financial investment. The old way involved frantic research, polling friends and experts, weighing pros and cons until the mind was a tangled web of fear and contradiction. This is the activity of the personal sense, the I that believes it must figure, control, and orchestrate from a foundation of limited knowledge. But when you are on the right path, a curious stillness enters this process. The noise of what they will think, or what is normally done, begins to lose its compelling power. It is not that you become reckless or dismissive of wise counsel. Rather, you listen through the words to something deeper. You may hear the same advice you once would have rejected, but now it lands with the resonance of truth. Or you may feel a clear no in a situation that looks perfect on paper. This is not rebellion, it is obedience to a higher harmony. This transfer of authority from the outer to the inner is often misinterpreted by the world and even by your own earlier self as aloofness or arrogance. It is neither. It is the most humble posture possible, for it is the surrender of the personal intellect's arrogance. The arrogance that believed it alone could navigate the ocean of life. You are stepping aside consciously to let the infinite navigate. Your daily life becomes the laboratory for this. That moment you refrain from gossiping, not because a rule forbids it, but because you feel the discordant vibration within your own being, is an act of inner authority. The instant you choose peace over being right in a petty argument, you are honoring this inner government. When you feel an intuitive nudge to turn left instead of your usual right, and later discover you avoided a delay or encountered a needed opportunity, you are witnessing this principle in gentle action. This authority does not shout. It does not need to. Its power is in its silent certainty. You will find yourself less and less in need of explaining your decisions, less invested in crafting a persona that is acceptable to every audience. The frantic energy once spent managing perceptions is reclaimed and becomes a pool of peace. You are no longer a ship tossed by every wave of opinion or societal expectation. You have dropped anchor in the depths of your own being. This can feel isolating to the part of you that craved belonging in the outer. It is, in fact, the beginning of true belonging to yourself. Think of the artist who, after years of painting for the market, finally closes the studio door and creates from a place of pure, uncompromised impulse. The work may not immediately find a buyer, but there is an integrity in it that feeds the soul. That is inner authority manifesting. Or the parent who, amidst a cacophony of parenting advice, suddenly knows, just knows, the right word of comfort for their child, a word that comes not from a book, but from a silent, loving depth. That is the inner voice in action. This sign is not about becoming infallible or never seeking counsel. It is about the source of your final recourse shifting headquarters. The committee meeting in your mind is adjourned, and in the quiet chamber of your consciousness, you wait, you listen. And from that silence, a knowing arises. It may not come with a 5-point plan. It may come as a simple feeling of rightness, a clarity that cuts through complexity, or a deep sense of peace about one path amid a forest of options. This is the unmistakable evidence that you are no longer laboring under the tyranny of the world's drumbeat, but are learning to move to the rhythm of an invisible, spiritual principle. The struggle to decide begins to evaporate, replaced by the patience to discern and the courage to follow. Following this inner authority, a most remarkable and often unsettling shift begins to occur. Where once there was a driving force, a relentless personal will that pushed and strained to make life conform to its demands, you now find a curious emptiness. The familiar engine of, I must make this happen, sputters and stalls. This is not a descent into apathy, but the glorious and necessary collapse of forceful personal will. It is the sign that the burden of being the sole architect of your destiny is being lifted from your shoulders. You are learning in your daily experience the profound truth that the universe requires no coercion, only conscious cooperation. Feel into the moments where you once would have gritted your teeth and forced an outcome. Perhaps it was a business deal you manipulated into being, a relationship you pleaded and schemed to maintain, or a personal goal you achieved through sheer, exhausting effort. Recall the hollow taste of those victories, how often they crumbled or demanded constant upkeep. Now, observe a different rhythm emerging. You set an intention, you take the inspired action that appears before you, which may be surprisingly modest, and then, instead of pushing the river, you release your grip. You might find yourself working with diligence, but without the familiar undercurrent of anxiety. Or you may find a door closing firmly, and instead of throwing your weight against it, you find a quiet acceptance, a knowing that a better way is preparing itself. This is the action of grace displacing the action of greed. This collapse can be misinterpreted as a loss of ambition or drive. The world, which worships the sweat of the brow and the force of personality, may see you as less determined. But you are moving from determination to discernment. The straining to become is giving way to the peace of being. In practical terms, this means you no longer try to convince people of your worth. You simply embody it, and the right connections are drawn to that light without campaign or advertisement. You stop forcing solutions upon problems and instead bring a silent consciousness of peace to the situation, allowing a higher intelligence to rearrange the pieces. The frantic search for the perfect partner transforms into the quiet work of becoming a whole consciousness. And from that wholeness, relationship finds its natural and harmonious form. Consider the simple act of gardening. The old way was to obsess over every detail, to overwater, over-fertilize, to fuss and control. The new way is to plant the seed in good soil, provide it with what it needs, and then step back in trust, allowing the inherent intelligence within the seed and the sun, and the rain to perform the miracle of growth. Your role is one of watchful cooperation, not anxious manufacture. Or think of sleep. You cannot force yourself to sleep. The more you strive for it, the more it eludes you. But when you relinquish the effort, settle into the bed, and let go, sleep comes as a gift. Your manifestation journey begins to mirror this exact principle. The striving is the block. The surrender is the conduit. You will notice this in conversations that once would have been debates. You feel no compulsion to win the argument, to have the last word, to prove your point. Your sense of self is no longer tied to the other person's agreement. This is a tangible release of personal will. You may find yourself in traffic, running late, and the old panic and aggression simply do not arise. You take a breath, you accept the moment, and you discover that time often rearranges itself, or the meeting is delayed, or the lateness proves inconsequential. You are learning to flow with the current of life, not waste your strength swimming frantically against it. This is not passive. It is intensely active, but the activity is internal and spiritual. It is the activity of maintaining your alignment with the divine flow, of vigilantly dismissing the old impulses of lack and fear, of consenting to be an instrument rather than the composer. The musician does not force the music from the violin. They learn the technique. They practice the scales, and then they let the music sing through them. Your life becomes that instrument. The goals and dreams are not abandoned. They are entrusted. You do the footwork that is clearly in front of you. You make the call. You write the page. You attend the meeting. But you do it without the crushing weight of personal responsibility for the outcome. The outcome is the business of the infinite. Your business is to stay in the harmony of this moment, free from the feverish push of a future you imagine you must control. In this sacred emptiness, where personal will once roared, a new power gathers. It is a quiet, irresistible power that moves not by force, but by the law of its own being, attracting and arranging your world from a dimension the straining mind could never access. From this place of surrendered will, your relationship with the very fabric of time, an event, begins to transform. Where you once lived by the rigid ledger of the calendar and the to-do list, forcing life into a linear plan of your own design, you now begin to witness a more magical choreography. This is the sign where synchronicity replaces rigid planning as the governing principle of your daily experience. It is not that planning has no utility, but its nature changes entirely. It becomes a loose framework, a gentle setting of intention, which you then release into the care of a higher intelligence that orchestrates connections and opportunities with a precision that humbles the human mind. You will notice this as a series of meaningful coincidences that are too perfect, too timely to be mere chance. It is thinking of a friend you have not spoken to in years, only to have them call you moments later. It is stumbling upon a book that answers a question you whispered only to yourself the night before. It is feeling a quiet urge to visit a certain cafe, only to sit down next to someone who offers the exact piece of information or partnership you needed for a project, yet never thought to seek. These are not random events. They are the visible evidence of an invisible network, a divine matrix at work, responding to the frequency of your inner state. They are confirmations that you are in the flow, no longer paddling against the current, but allowing it to carry you to the right place at the right time. Consider the practical implications. You may sit down to plan your week, but instead of filling every hour with forceful agendas, you leave open spaces. You write, work on project, instead of a militant, step-by-step breakdown. Then, as you move through the days, you find yourself acting on sudden inspirations, clearing a drawer, which leads you to find an old business card, which prompts a call, which opens a door you could never have schemed into your planner. The rigid plan would have kept you chained to your desk, missing the thread. The synchronicity used your action to reveal the thread. Your planning becomes an act of faith, a declaration of direction, not a demand for a specific route. This principle revolutionizes problem solving. The old model was to grind mentally on a problem, to wrestle it into submission through sheer intellectual force. Now, you learn to pose the problem inwardly, to your spiritual awareness, and then to let it go. You might go for a walk, take a shower, or engage in a completely unrelated task. And in that release, the answer arrives, not as a strained conclusion, but as a flash of insight, or through a song on the radio whose lyrics speak directly to your situation, or through a child's innocent remark that pierces to the heart of the matter. The universe becomes your collaborator, communicating through the medium of daily life. You see it in career paths that unfold in ways no career counselor could chart. The laid-off employee who, instead of frantically applying for the same old job, uses the space to volunteer in a new field only to be offered a unique position there that didn't exist until they showed up. You see it in the search for a home, where the meticulously researched listings fall through, but a lost wrong turn leads you down a street where a for sale sign catches your eye, and you know immediately you are home. These are the maneuvers of a benevolent intelligence, using your footsteps as part of a grander design. This demands a new kind of courage, the courage to not know the next step, to trust the breadcrumbs of intuition as they appear. It requires you to become an exquisite listener and a fearless follower of the gentle nudges that have no logical explanation. You will find that appointments reschedule themselves to create space for a needed rest. The right people appear in your life just as you are ready for their lesson or their partnership. Resources materialize from unexpected quarters when the old, controlled channels seem dry. Your life stops feeling like a solitary trek across a desert and starts to feel like a guided tour through a living, responsive ecosystem. You are in dialogue with reality itself, and it is a conversation filled with grace, surprise, and an undeniable intelligence that is conspiring for your highest good. The anxiety of needing to figure everything out melts away, replaced by a thrilling anticipation to see what will be revealed next, how the pieces you have lovingly released will be gathered and assembled by a hand far more skilled than your own. As this orchestration of life becomes your lived experience, a profound alchemy takes place within your very desires. The burning, personal cravings that once felt like urgent necessities, the specific job title, the exact sum of money, the particular person as a partner, begin to lose their feverish grip. This is not a cooling of passion, but a transformation of it. Your desire is being refined, lifted from the personal to the impersonal. It is shifting from a want for a specific form to an impulse for a divine quality of experience. This is the sign where desire transforms into an impersonal impulse. You are no longer seeking a thing. You are being drawn to embody a state of being, and the forms that match that state then gravitate naturally to you. Feel the difference. The old desire shouted, "I must have that promotion to feel secure and respected." The new impulse whispers a deeper truth. I am an open conduit for abundance and meaningful contribution. The first is a finite goal, a single door that, if closed, appears as failure. The second is an infinite principle, a quality of consciousness that can manifest through 1,000 different doors, some you have not yet even imagined. The personal desire for a specific house is consumed by the impersonal impulse for home, a sense of sanctuary, peace, and rootedness. This home, consciousness could manifest as a different property, a profound renovation of your inner landscape that changes your current dwelling, or a completely new geographical beginning. You are attuning to the essence and letting the infinite handle the particulars. This explains the mysterious phenomenon where a long-held, specific dream dissolves, not in disappointment, but in a quiet wave of peace. In its place arises a broader, more generous yearning. You wanted to be a famous speaker, but the impulse transforms into a desire to be a clear voice for truth. This may lead you to write, to mentor one on one, to create art, or yes, perhaps to speak, but the platform and scale become irrelevant. The fulfillment is in the expression itself, not the applause. The personal will sort the trophy. The impersonal impulse seeks the expression of the gift. In your daily life, you notice this when you are shopping. The frantic desire to acquire, to fill a void softens. You may walk through a store and feel appreciation for items without the need to possess them, because the impulse for beauty or comfort is already satisfied within. Or you may be guided to purchase something modest and perfect, a symbol of that inner fulfillment, rather than something grandiose to proclaim a lacking self. Consider your relationships. The personal desire demands that a person act in specific ways to make you happy. It is a contract, and its terms are constantly being broken, leading to strife. The impersonal impulse is to express and experience unconditional love, understanding, or harmonious companionship. From this consciousness, you stop trying to sculpt your partner into the right form. You become the very quality you seek. This either transforms the existing relationship at a fundamental level or, like a law of magnetism, draws to you a person vibrating at that same level of consciousness. The love is no longer for someone. It flows through you, and someone appears within its radius. This is the secret behind so-called detachment in manifestation. It is not that you do not care. It is that you are no longer attached to the single pictured form your human mind conceived. You are attached instead to the feeling, the quality, the spiritual substance. You desire the experience of freedom, not merely a bank account number. You desire vitality, not just a specific medical test result. You desire creative fulfillment, not just a published book with your name on it. When your focus is on the quality, the intelligence of the universe has infinite flexibility in how to deliver it to you. Your specific vision was often the bottleneck, the limitation. The impersonal impulse is limitlessness itself. You will feel this as a profound relief. The burden of micromanaging God, of insisting on the how and the when, falls away. Your prayer changes from a list of requests to a silent abiding in the feeling of completeness. You might sit in meditation, not to visualize a car, but to feel the wind of movement, the security of journey, the joy of exploration. You release that feeling into the invisible, and then you watch. The car may come, or you may discover a perfect public transit route, that gives you time to read, or a neighbor may start a carpool that leads to a beautiful new friendship. The essence, movement, freedom, connection is fulfilled perfectly, often in a manner that expands your life in ways your original, specific desire would have blinded you to. Your wanting becomes a holy thing, a compass needle pointing not to an object, but to a higher state of your own being. You are not chasing a reflection in the pond. You are turning to face the sun itself, and in that turning, all shadows fall behind you. With this inner realignment, where desire has become a sacred impulse and the outer world bends to synchronicity, a natural and inevitable drawing inward occurs. The noise and clamor of the collective world, once so stimulating and seemingly necessary, begins to feel abrasive. What was once considered loneliness transforms into a profound and cherished solitude. This is not a retreat born of fear or misanthropy, but an irresistible pull toward the only place where this new consciousness can be nurtured and heard, the sanctuary of your own being. Solitude becomes a cherished sanctuary, the essential ground where the finite personality is silenced and the infinite can make itself known. This is the fifth sign, the conscious and joyful cultivation of aloneness with the One. You will notice this as a change in your relationship with activity and people. The compulsion to fill every evening, to scroll through endless digital voices, to engage in conversation that dances only on the surface of things, starts to feel draining rather than nourishing. You begin to decline invitations, not with guilt, but with the clear knowing that you have a more important appointment, an appointment with the silence within. This is not antisocial. It is the deepest form of social preparation, for from this sanctuary, you will have something of substance to bring to others, rather than seeking to extract substance from them. The empty calendar slot, the quiet walk without headphones, the early morning hour before the household stirs, these become not voids to be filled, but sacred spaces to be entered with reverence. Consider the practicalities. The busy parent who, instead of collapsing into passive entertainment after the children sleep, chooses 10 minutes of conscious silence on the back porch, feeling the night air and listening to the hum of their own being. In that stillness, a patience and a creativity are restored that no television show could provide. The executive, surrounded by noise all day, begins to close the office door for 5 minutes every few hours, not to work, but to consciously breathe and release the identity of the boss, touching the peace that underlies all roles. This is not a waste of time. It is the recalibration that makes all other time effective. The solitude you seek is not necessarily physical isolation, though it may include it. It is an inner solitude, the ability to be deeply alone and at peace even in a crowd, to carry that sanctuary within you as a portable temple. This is where the real work of manifestation is accomplished. It is in this silent communion that the blueprints of the old self are dissolved and the new landscape of consciousness is established. All the previous signs converge here. In the solitude, you hear the inner authority clearly, undistorted by opinion. In the silence, the last vestiges of personal will are surrendered. In the quiet, you become receptive to the intuitive nudges that guide you to synchronous events. In the deep rest of aloneness, your desires are purified from personal want to impersonal impulse. Solitude is the womb where the new creation is formed. To avoid it is to avoid the very workshop of God. You see this in the artist who must retreat to the studio, the writer to the cabin, the visionary to the walk in nature. They are not running away. They are running to the source of their inspiration. Your daily life offers countless micro sanctuaries if you claim them. The commute where you turn off the radio and drive in conscious presence. The lunch break spent sitting under a tree instead of in the cafeteria. The deliberate pause before answering a phone call to center in something greater than reaction. Each of these acts is a declaration that your primary relationship is with the divine within, and all other relationships flow from that central spring. This growing need for solitude will be misunderstood by the world, which fears silence and equates being alone with being lonely. You will know the difference. Loneliness is the pain of the isolated personal self. The solitude you crave is the joy of the universal self, communing with itself. It is in this space that you download the peace that becomes your resilience, the ideas that become your contributions, the love that becomes your healing presence in the world. You are not leaving life. You are dipping into the wellspring to bring life back, refreshed and authentic. The crowd in the marketplace is loud, but it is in the desert, in the mountain cave, in the inner chamber with the door shut, that the prophets heard the voice that changed everything. Your sanctuary is wherever you consciously withdraw to remember what you are, to listen for the rhythm of a different drum, and to align your heartbeat with the pulse of the timeless. From this place, you engage with the world not from a sense of depletion and need, but from an overflowing fullness that has nothing to prove and everything to give. Building upon the sanctuary of solitude, where the inner ear is finely tuned and personal noise recedes, a final, overarching awareness dawns. It is a subtle yet unshakable sense that permeates every aspect of your experience. This is the sign of being governed by an invisible principle. It is the lived conviction, born not of doctrine but of direct evidence, that your life is not a series of random accidents or won personal victories, but the visible expression of an intelligent, loving, and omnipresent law. You no longer feel like the sole author of your story, frantically scribbling on a blank page. You feel instead like a conscious character, discovering the story as it is written by a hand of infinite wisdom, a story where every event, whether you initially label it good or bad, is conspiring for your ultimate awakening and unfolds with a perfection you could not have designed. This awareness transforms your relationship with challenge and delay. Where once a blocked goal or a sudden loss would have triggered panic, resentment, or a crushing sense of personal failure, you now find a curious space opening within you. You may not understand the why in the moment, but a deeper part of you knows there is a why. You develop the capacity to pause, to look at the obstacle not as a wall, but as a redirect. It is the feeling of being in a flowing river. When you come upon a rock, you do not rage against the rock. You simply flow around it. Understanding the rock is part of the river's course. The missed flight that leads to a fortuitous meeting at the airport lounge. The project collapse that forces you into a period of rest during which a brilliant new idea is born. The illness that slows you down enough to re-evaluate your entire life's direction. These are not merely silver linings you talk yourself into. They are the tangible fingerprints of the governing principle, and you begin to recognize them in real time. In daily life, this manifests as a profound release of anxiety about outcomes. You perform your duties, you show up with integrity, you take the inspired actions that arise from your inner silence, but you hold the results very lightly. You are like a farmer who tills the soil, plants the seed, and tends the field, but does not stand over each stalk tugging it to grow faster. He trusts in the principle of growth, in the intelligence of sun and rain and soil. You operate with the same trust in a broader spiritual principle. This is not laziness. It is the highest form of intelligent action because it is action aligned with, rather than opposed to, the creative force of the universe. You find yourself saying and knowing, this is in God's hands, and meaning it not as a cliché of resignation, but as a statement of absolute spiritual fact and immense relief. This sense of government reveals itself in the serendipitous provision of needs. You think of a resource, and it appears often from an unexpected quarter. You feel a pinch of lack, and almost immediately an opportunity to give or share presents itself, dissolving the sense of scarcity by shifting your consciousness from receiver to conduit. You witness the perfect timing of events where people, information, and opportunities converge, not a moment too early or too late, but precisely when you are inwardly ready to receive them. Your life begins to feel supported, guided, even in its difficulties. The rough edges of existence seem to smooth, not because life gets easier, but because your perception softens. You are no longer fighting reality, but collaborating with the deeper current moving within it. Consider the simple act of a difficult conversation. The old way was to rehearse speeches, to armor yourself for battle, to anticipate every rebuttal. Now, with this sense of an invisible government, you may still prepare, but you enter the conversation with an inner surrender to a higher wisdom. You find yourself listening more deeply, speaking words you did not plan that carry a healing weight, and the entire interaction moves to a resolution you could not have scripted. You were an instrument, and something far greater played the tune. Or think of a creative endeavor. The artist who tries to force a painting from their intellect creates something stiff and lifeless. The artist who enters the studio with a prayer of openness, who touches the brush to the canvas with a sense of discovery, becomes the vehicle for a beauty that surprises even them. That is the invisible principle in action, creativity flowing through, not from, the individual. This awareness ultimately dissolves the last vestiges of the sense of a separate, struggling self. You see your life not as a solitary beacon fighting the darkness, but as a unique focal point where an infinite, benevolent light is choosing to express. Your successes are not trophies for your ego, but demonstrations of the principle for all who have eyes to see. Your challenges are not punishments, but focused curriculum for your soul's expansion. You walk through your days with a quiet awe, a detective looking for the clues of this divine order. A traffic jam becomes a chance to breathe and observe. A child's question becomes a portal to wonder. A setback becomes a sacred puzzle. You are no longer at the mercy of the world. You are in a conscious, cooperative dance with the intelligence that animates it. The burden of being the general manager of the universe is lifted, and in its place is the sacred privilege of being a witness, a student, and a willing participant in a story so much grander, so much more intricately beautiful than any your personal mind could have conceived. You have moved from seeking control to perceiving grace, and in that perception, you find yourself forever held, forever guided, forever at home in a universe that is profoundly and intelligently friendly.